Live start points really are one of the best additions to the game this year. Sure, they were fun at the start of the year where you could skip the August transfer window, but now we're in the last part of the season, things are even more intense. Some of the clubs we're going to talk about in today's video are in positions that would be borderline impossible to replicate in a regular save, but thanks to live start points, you can actually create some super unique scenarios. I spent a few hours looking at every league and every game week, and I think the most fun one I found was Internazionale in game week 32. This is the week that's closest to the 20th of April, and I'm sure I can persuade you to try the save. Inter find themselves top of the Italian league, having just beaten Bayern Munich to also reach the Champions League semi-finals. So you have a couple of targets to beat there. Can you win the league and can you win the Champions League? Well, in the next two league games in real life, Inter would lose. In the next Italian Cup game, against huge rivals AC Milan, Inter would also lose. So they've potentially gone from winning a treble to winning absolutely nothing. But thanks to the live start points, you can still save their season. Their squad, of course, is absolutely amazing. It probably will need a rebuild within 2 or 3 seasons, but the only reason why you wouldn't love trying the save idea is probably because Inter aren't actually licensed on FC25. When you clicked on this video, you probably thought of two very obvious save ideas, so let's get them out of the way early in this video. Manchester United and Spurs are both in a really bad position. There's not much point really having a live start point past January with them because they're so safe from relegation and never really going to finish above 15th. But the Premier League does have a couple of good options too. Because I'm a Forest fan, you probably knew that I would include them in this video. But even if I hated Forest, I think I'd still be including them. It's such an interesting position for the club to be in. They finished 17th in 2023, 17th in 2024, but potentially could finish 5th in 2025. It's such a rapid rise. Potentially though is an important word there, because Forest could easily drop all the way down to 6th and miss out on the Champions League altogether. That makes them so fun for a live start point. You can start in March where they still have to play Man City, Newcastle and Villa, who are all teams around them in the league. Or you can start in April and be trying to hold on to the points lead that the club had at that point. It's a tough run of fixtures, but every single one of these games is a chance to cement your club in the top 4. The squad is really good in career mode too. They use a traditional target man, a traditional playmaker, 2 rapid wingers and a really strong defence that is kind of more of a throwback to how teams used to line up back on FIFA 16. But Forest really do need your help to return to the Champions League for the first time since they were reigning champions back in 1981. I remember a few years ago, Forest were in a very similar situation to Sunderland were in their latest start points. With the playoffs confirmed, they would lose 4 games in a row, trying to rest players so that they could win the playoffs. That didn't really work out for Forest. They would go on to lose to Blackpool in the 2011 playoff semi-final. But it's also exactly what Sunderland have been doing over the past couple of weeks. The club are solidly in 4th place and on track for one of the biggest games of the past decade where they're going to be playing in a playoff semi-final. But that means that the April live start points put you in a really interesting position. You'll have a couple of games to learn how your squad works and who you like using and how to line them up. And then you'll be playing one of the most important games of the season against one of the 6 teams below you in the table. It could be Bristol City, Coventry City, Middlesbrough, Blackburn or Millwall. They're all interesting saves in their own right too, but I still think Sunderland is the best of all of the playoff teams. You'll have a few games, like I said, to learn the squad, and after that it is all intense matches and potentially a Premier League save for Season 2. Back in the Premier League, after statistically the hardest first 10 games in Premier League history, Wolves had only drawn 3 of the first 10 games, losing the other 7. But despite this, they kept faith in manager Gary O'Neill. This was really not a good idea, and after changing to Vitor Pereira in around December, things improved a lot at Molineux. I also recommended Wolves back in November before they hired Vitor Pereira, but it's even more interesting now to take over a club at the end of January. At this point, they have just lost 4 games in a row, and the club have actually dropped back down into the relegation zone. In real life, Wolves would go on to win 6 in a row to secure safety in April, but that's the challenge that you have to match. It's up to you to see if you can keep Cunha at the club, maybe try and tie Aït-Nouri to a new contract. It's a team that lots of people used back when they had Adama Traore, Ruben Neves, João Moutinho and Raul Jimenez, but it's time for you to create a new identity for Wolves in Season 2. Let's leave England again, and also leave the month of April, because for this next idea, we have to go back to the 16th of February to have a look at Real Betis. The 11th place Real Betis signed Anthony and Chucho Hernandez, and then would go on to win 8 of their next 10 games, including a win against Real Madrid and a draw against Barcelona. This run of form was pretty crazy, but I think you could probably do even better with Betis in FC25. If you choose to start your save on the final day of March, you'll be 6 games in to a winning streak, with Barcelona and Villarreal as your next 2 games. In real life, they would draw to Barcelona and lose to Villarreal, but if you can beat them, you could improve that 8 wins in 10 to 10 wins in 10. Barcelona actually made it to 16 wins in a row back in 2011, and Real Madrid have matched them in 2016, but for Betis to do that, or even go further, would be absolutely bonkers. Guess how many games Betis have left in this season? There are 5, so to beat this record, you would also have to win the first 2 games of the next season, but with a transfer window in the middle, it's a really fun challenge for you to try to beat. 16 wins in a row is an actually elite amount of wins, so even if you don't manage it, you'll still probably be taking control of a Real Betis side that's in the Champions League, which of course is a fun save just by itself. Speaking of the Champions League, in game week 26, around the middle of March, you can find the Yellow Giants Borussia Dortmund all the way down in 11th place. That's awful for a team that you would consider title contenders, but they still have potential for a top 4 finish, as well as a Champions League win. Of course, that is a very unlikely combination, but it is still possible. However, it's not the most interesting situation in the Bundesliga. Further down the league, there's an even better story. Heidenheim are a really underrated story here in England. I mean, I've barely heard anything about them this season, so you might not know they were unbeaten for the first 3 games, on 6 points and top of the Bundesliga. It could have potentially been a Leicester 5,000 to 1 season. Well, I think it would probably actually be even more than those odds. In 2008, these guys were in the 5th division, and the club had never been higher than that. So maybe Frank Schmidt was about to turn them into a Bundesliga mid-table side, or even better. Well, not quite. The club sank lower and lower throughout the season, and only got another 19 points from the next 29 games. But if we rewind to the start of April, you actually are in such an interesting position. You'll be playing against Bayern Munich, Frankfurt and Leverkusen, who are the teams in 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the Bundesliga. Realistically, if you want to stay up, you'll need to win 2 of your final 6 to avoid the relegation playoff. It's a really difficult and super unique situation to find a club in, and one that I think would be super fun for a short-term save. So that's a pretty spread out variety of live start point saves that I think are super interesting and ones that I think are worth giving a go. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've got any combinations of game weeks, leagues and clubs that you think make even better stories than the ones that I've mentioned today, then of course let me know that too, because I'm always interested in seeing good saves for career mode. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Check out my save review video if you haven't already seen it. I'll put the link to that on the screen right now. I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.